Here's a great way to spend the weekend. You're in a podcast studio. You're amongst good people. And look at all this. It's a beautiful sight that we present to you here. We put it on display for you because I'm about to put this man in a very uncomfortable position. By the way, I'm Rob Acampora. You're welcome to be a part of the A Game. Usually you're on the other side on your own podcast.
Yes.
Point Blank Podcast. I got to give that a prop here from a shared universe. But John has a little sideline. It's called Ross Brewing, which is starting to take off, and he's branched out into the cider industry for this holiday season. John Ross Cocozza, thanks for coming on, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, Rob. You're not wrong. I've sometimes, Wednesday nights I physically sit in this seat.
Right.
But I'm the one asking the questions, so it feels weird to be on the other side of it. So
I would feel the same way because I'm so used to being the interviewer. If somebody were to interview me, I'd be like, no. Can we flip this around, please?
Right.
But I think it's important because what's happening with your company, it's really starting to take off. Obviously, this is the beginning.
Yes.
Because to launch in New Jersey and really corner New Jersey and the tri-state area, then the next step, obviously, is to try to be like a lot of these microbrew companies and try to go national. I mean, it's a painstaking process, is it not?
It is. Each state has their own unique set of rules,
right,
and processes that you have to follow. And in our case, even though we're based right here in Monmouth County, New Jersey, I live 5 minutes away. The brewery is about 10 minutes away. Right. Just because of those different rules, our license to sell in New York actually came in first, Rob.
Oh, that's weird.
So we've been selling in New York since December of last year, and we've been selling in New Jersey now for the last month. Finally. Yeah.
That's got to be a good feeling. At least now it's like, I can go to my liquor store.
Yes.
I can get it.
Exactly.
Yes.
You get it, man. You get it.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I was happy to post this up on Facebook, and a lot of people were already asking, like, hey, that looks great. Where can I get it? That's a really good sign, too. I mean, the word is out on you guys. There's no doubt about that. Where they've gone into some bars and they've seen Ross.
Yep.
So now to go into the liquor store and be able to take, as you can see, these 4-packs home with you, these beautifully displayed beers, by the way. And I did notice you put like 4. Can they do a mixed pack? I mean, especially with the holidays, I was thinking that's a great gift.
So that is entirely up to the individual retailer. We've seen certain retailers, such as the Saltwater Market down in Asbury, where they let you do mixed 4-packs, mixed 6-packs.
Nice.
So they sell the cans individually. Other places like you to keep 4 and 6s together.
Right.
It's really all down to it. I happen to know a place they asked not to be promoted, which is a shame because I'd love to promote them.
Oh, sure. This is what it's all about, man.
But they said if somebody asks, they'll do it for them.
Right.
So I would just tell your listeners, just ask. It sure doesn't hurt.
Very cool.
Yep.
I mean, when you think about beer, when we were growing up, because I think we're right around the same age, so you think about it, the first time we kind of saw a beer commercial, think about the 1970s, and we're seeing like, okay, Schaefer, Rheingold, Schlitz.
That's the one beer to have when you're
having more than one.
Exactly.
But I mean, I can remember being a kid, and actually, because my Grandpa Derico, was like the guy who would sit there watch a Mets game, crack open a Schaefer. And I remember tasting it, and I'm like spitting it out. I mean,
you know what's funny? Schaefer was my grandmother's beer. All right.
Oh, wow.
My grandmother, she would drink with the best of them, and Schaefer was her beer. And she actually had all kinds of Schaefer swag and stuff.
Oh, wow. Yeah, they've become collector's items now. I've noticed
exactly,
that. Yeah,
exactly. Then after that, then you go to the 80s, and you have Taste Great, Less Filling.
Yeah, the whole Miller Lite thing really took off at that point.
Absolutely.
But the microbrew thing, I can remember 2000s, but it really was starting in the 90s because when I was working down in Delaware, Dogfish really started to explode when I got down there around 2001. But it was around like in the mid 90s.
That was probably the first big mass explosion. The first what we think of as craft breweries started early 80s.
Okay.
You basically had 3 there. You had Jim Koch up at Sam Adams.
Sam Adams,
and
definitely.
then you had Ken Grossman out at Sierra Nevada. And then the guy that was there for a little longer was Fritz over at Anchor Brewing. But those 3 kind of were like the first foray into it. But it took a while. It took until the 90s where brands started to become more recognizable. You mentioned Dogfish Head.
Yeah.
I mean, they've done a great job. They built up an amazing brand. And you know what happened last year is...
that $300 million deal.
It's a pretty good deal.
Goodness, yeah. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, so he's down. They're part of Boston Beer Co. just there with Sam Adams. And the interesting thing there, what we're really happy about as just beer fans, is that Sam Coglione, the owner brewer there, he said, hey, I'm staying on board because now joining forces with Sam, who knows where we can take this?
Right.
And they're getting more creative with access to rarer ingredients. So, listen, we're a long way off. We're a month into this here, but certainly we have ambition, right?
But yeah, exactly. It's got to be an encouraging start, though, because you see how the industry has just in the last 20 years exploded. And when you see a deal like that, and Founders was another one.
Yes.
90% of the company sold. I think it was almost along the same amount of money
as
Dogfish Head got.
They sold to a Spanish beer giant.
Yeah.
And what was very interesting to me in the announcements there is that the two founders, they stayed on.
Yeah.
They each kept 5%.
Right.
And then to your point, 90% was acquired. But what they said is where they were so happy was for their investors. They said, our investors, they've been with us for day one. You know, think about it as friends, family. And they said they've never gotten a dime from us until now, which was mind-blowing to me because you think of Founders. I mean, they're big. You know, they're making money already.
Yeah.
But kind of that was the deal is all the investors said, keep all the money in, grow the place until one day we can sell. Right. And so we kind of conditioned our investors as well. Hey, listen, that would be ideal one day. But if the worst thing is we've got a great local brewery and we're making beer and we can enjoy it and see it everywhere that we go out, that'd be pretty cool too.
John Ross Cocozza is the founder of Ross Brewing, and he's here on the A Game. The thing that I'm noticing too, and I think the first sign of flavoring in the beer, for me, that was Samuel Adams Cherry Wheat beer.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
That was the one that kind of just like, oh my God, where's this been all my life?
Yes.
But I never thought beer and flavoring would actually work together, and that's become more popular than ever before.
You almost can't keep up with it, Rob, because it started out that cherry wheat great. They did another one around the holidays. They would do a honey porter.
Yes.
Sam Adams. That was another favorite of mine. And but yes, more and more breweries started adding whether it was fruit flavors or chocolate flavors or other kinds of flavors, and now it's almost every other beer has, you know, we have a beer here in front of us, right?
I was about to say, the Manasquan Wit is a great example of what we're talking about. Now, this is basically your version of a Belgian white, but it has orange zest, it's got a little bit of lemon, and cucumber, which is an interesting combination.
Okay, so this one's not cucumber.
Okay.
We actually do have, this one has coriander, the spice.
Okay.
We do have a cucumber beer as well, though, so it's interesting you said that.
That's funny.
But in this case, you know, the Belgian white, you mentioned it, right? And the two ones I think that might be best known to people would be on a craftier side like an Allagash white, and on a more of a mass side like a Blue Moon.
Yeah.
And so if you can imagine a spectrum between those, we're somewhere in the middle on that spectrum, probably about 80% towards Allagash, 20% towards Blue Moon, because I still wanted people to be able to pick it up. You don't have to be a craft beer snob.
No.
Exactly. So yeah, good flavors there.
Yeah, I'm excited to try this when I get home. That's for sure. This is going to be chilled, and I'm going to enjoy that.
Yep.
Interesting you mentioned Blue Moon, because I think the one thing that kind of stood out is that they're taking it one step further. It's like now they're putting mango in the beer, and it's like, are we going too far, in your opinion, or is there no boundaries when it comes to craft beer?
So the answer to both of those questions is yes. Okay. How is that possible? Right. So sometimes you wake up in the morning, you know, you're reading the craft beer news, which is something that, you know, I do, and you're like, okay, they just did a peanut butter and jelly sandwich Pilsner. Okay, like, are we going too far? I absolutely recognize that. And, you know, I think about guys like my dad, my father-in-law, you know, work with us at the brewery. And, you know, I think the most exciting thing he did is when he you know, when he was doing a steak dinner, instead of a Budweiser, it would be a Heineken. Okay? But now, like, it's almost unrecognizable. At the same time, I say, go for it. The audience will tell you when you've gone too far.
Okay, that's fair.
Right? If you make something bananas and nobody wants to buy it, then you take a step back.
Well, because I'm noticing, like, what did I see recently? I wrote it down on my banana bread beer, and I'm going, I don't know.
I haven't had that one. All right.
It's an interesting one that I kind of went, really?
Maybe that would be a good dessert beer. Okay.
Maybe. And that's the other thing. We're noticing that the bottling of beers now have become almost to the point of, like, wine.
Yes.
The bottling them like wine.
For sure.
So do you think that actually helps some of these breweries?
It does help you get into places where beer wouldn't ordinarily be served. Okay, so we're in some surprisingly high-end restaurants up in the city that 5 years ago would have never served beer. Okay. But now the price points have actually, believe it or not, crept up to the point where they can recognize its value.
Right.
And there's also been a movement, a push for you know, gourmands to recognize, hey, listen, beer has setting aside all those additional ingredients we just spoke about.
Sure.
Beer has 4 core ingredients. Okay, water, yeast, barley, and hops. And in wine, it's 2: the grapes and the yeast.
Right.
And so there's been a lot of push by the Brewers Association to get restaurants and chefs to recognize, hey, we'll never say anything bad about wine. I mean, I love wine. My wife loves wine. We'll never say anything bad about it. They said, but just with the number of ingredients in beer, it gives more opportunities for food pairings. And then you start adding things like banana bread or whatever else we're talking about. So, yes, they're definitely, it's getting recognized. It's getting a seat at the table, a little bit more, no longer at the kids' table only.
Right.
Not that kids should be drinking, of course.
No. We're not encouraging that. Must be over 21 to drink. Be responsible.
There you go. Wow.
There's the tag.
We'll put you to work there, Rob.
I'm a professional of some sort. Anyway, actually putting to work. Let's talk about the harvest, because this is a little different for you guys.
Yes.
Now, going into the cider bit of this,
Yep.
when it comes to, I mean, we've seen a lot of hard ciders, and that's another thing that's really become Magners and so many others that have really become very popular. So what made you decide to say, you know what, we're going to expand a little bit and give this a shot for the season, so to speak?
Sure. So, first of all, it was partly like, what did they say to Sir Edmund Hillary, right? Why did you climb Mount Everest? Because it's there. We wanted to try it to see if we could. Pull it off.
Fair enough.
Because it was a little outside of our comfort zone. We've been brewing beer for a long time.
Right.
You know, my wife couldn't wait for the brewery to open because she wanted to get all the brewing equipment out of our garage, right? So, but cider was going to be something new for us.
Okay.
You know, there's a number of members of the family, the extended Ross family, that for one reason or another, they're doing gluten-free. And beer, traditional beer, is gluten. It's made with malted barley. It has that same protein just like wheat does.
Right.
But cider is completely gluten-free naturally. And then there's some gluten-free beers we're developing with some alternate grains such as sorghum, but that's down the line. In any event. So,
but forgive me interrupting. I would imagine that's going to take a lot of doing, in the sense of you want to get the right taste.
100%.
So there's
exactly.
That's probably more of a time-consuming until we get that formula right.
Exactly right. Now, cider, the processes are in place. And in this case, we wanted to partner with somebody that we had high confidence that could execute our vision. So, there's a number of apple orchards right here in the state.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a few cideries in the state. Unfortunately, none of them had the capacity to work with us in terms of the volume we wanted to do.
That's interesting, because here, anybody, if you know Jersey, I mean, we kind of grew up around Delicious Orchards, which is a very big place for apples.
First place I went to.
Okay, you would have figured, absolutely.
Route 34 over in Colts Neck. And of course, and just in terms of apples, if we're talking about Monmouth County, you got to talk about Laird's.
Laird's Applejack, of course.
They've been doing the Applejack since the 1700s. It was George Washington's favorite drink. So
true.
They said it helped him get through that winter, Valley Forge. But in any event, so we wound up finding a place. They had a 150-year history. They're called the Soon's Apple Orchards, and it's right over the New Jersey border into upstate New York. Nice. Like if you're going to Woodbury Commons, you would almost pass this place. And so on site, they have a cider mill, the Orchard Hill Cider Mill. We sat down with them. I explained my concept, what I wanted to do. I wanted to make a crisp cider at 7%, so even a beer drinker can enjoy it.
And it's 7% alcohol.
And we come 6.9.
6.9. We'll round up 7%.
And there's a reason there. I'll tell you about that in a second.
All right.
But then I wanted to, because we wanted to use fresh fall harvest apples, I said, let's let it also feel or taste a little bit like going apple picking. And so we put a mix of fall spices that we came up with.
You're right.
Here. Now, did you pick up any of that?
I picked up on that right away.
Awesome.
It's interesting you're saying that. It's like, that's exactly what, in that one sip, it's like, and it's that, it hits you.
Yes.
And it hits you nice. It's a nice hit. It's not overpowering.
That was the goal. We didn't want it to be in your face.
Right.
Like, oh my God, this is all spice.
Right.
I want to let the apples speak for themselves, and we use a mix of about 6 different apple varieties on this that we selected.
Right.
And then, sort of on the back end, that's nice.
Yeah.
So
and I'm catching it's not overly sweet. So when you're talking about the 6 different apples, I'm thinking it was a mixture of tart, sweet, and maybe even a little sour.
So that's very astute of you. You've got a great palate, Rob.
Thank you.
So, in general, ciders are graded like wines on a scale from sweet to dry.
Okay.
And what that refers to, and we'll just give this little bit of education here to the listeners and viewers.
Please, yeah.
during the process, in wine it's grapes, in this case apples, obviously they produce sugar, right? We know that fruit sugar is called fructose.
Yeah.
And the yeast eats that sugar, and the yeast poop out alcohol, okay? And that's brewing and fermenting.
Welcome to Brewing 101.
There you go. So depending on how much of that sugar the yeasts eat,
right,
that determines how much is left in the cider or the wine. And cider is essentially apple wine. So if you leave a lot in there so it can taste that sweetness, you would call that a sweet wine or a sweet cider.
Okay, yeah.
And there's examples of sweet ciders. Sweet wine would be like a Riesling or a Moscato, something like that.
Very much so, yeah.
Well, and so you can have sweet, semi-sweet, semi-dry, dry. So we went semi-dry here. So we didn't want it to be overbearingly sweet, and correspondingly, we did pick apples that would go along with that.
Okay.
So good call.
Yeah, and it is not, and that's the other thing that I noticed. You're saying semi-dry. That's that describes it. It's not overly dry. And I'm not a fan of overly dry. That's
I agree. I agree. We thought that was the sweet spot. Now I will say this: we're having a sweeter cider come out in the spring for sale in the spring and summer season, and that is our Ross Pink Rosé cider.
Interesting. Okay.
So we're using different types of apples, sweeter apples, and then as well we're enhancing it with some hibiscus, some rose petals, and a few other surprises that I'll wait till the beer comes out. I don't want to reveal the whole thing now,
right.
But that would be then for that audience that maybe is looking for something sweeter. And again, it's pink, it's rosé, it's bubblier. We use a different yeast. It's nice.
Good stuff. The harvest is available right now.
Yes.
Is really good for the holiday season. There's another thing you have available. Ming, the photo I think it's called Gooseberry, if I'm not mistaken. Goseberry. Am I getting right? Yeah, we go.
Oh, there you go.
Now that's the mixed berry sour. I mean, what is that like? Because we don't have it here. So give it a little description.
Sure. So first thing is that's going to be available statewide in about 10 days from today.
Looking forward to it. Okay.
And we've got 15 locations that have signed up to carry that.
Okay.
So that's going to be everywhere. We tell people go to the website at rossbrewing.com. There's a beer finder. And, it's interactive with Google Maps. You can see where you are. You can see where the closest place is. Now, this gets to exactly what you were talking about earlier. The evolution of the industry. I can remember as recently as 7 years ago, the concept of sour beers in the U.S. was not something with mass appeal.
No.
The Belgians have always done great with it, and they're innovators in the beer, the beer sphere, as are the Germans and the British and the Irish, right? But I guess about that time you started to see more sour beers appearing here. Then again in the last, let's say 3 years, the accent became on fruited sours because the sweetness of the fruit can cut some of the sourness.
There we go. That makes sense.
And so that was our goal here. But we're doing something a little bit different because this is what we do at Ross. If we see something's working, we're going to take it and we're going to tweak it a bit.
Okay.
So the reason it's called Goseberry, it's sort of a pun. The style of sour we use, there's a number of sours. We went with a German style called a Gose. Okay, so all kinds of sours. There's a Berliner Weiss. There's a Flanders Oud Bruin. This is a Gose. It's traditional German sour style that's typically made with salt, sea salt, and coriander. So to that Gose, we then added a fruit that's grown right here in New Jersey, which are gooseberries.
Okay, there's the play on words. There we go.
So gooseberries themselves are not always the sweetest fruit. Matter of fact, if you're picking them just past ripeness, there's a sourness to them. The sweet has gone so far as to become sour. So we wanted to get the gooseberries that were just a little bit past ripe, so get a little bit of that sourness.
Right.
And then because we are in the Garden State and we're in Monmouth County where there's berry farms all over the place,
there is.
We threw some locally grown raspberries and blackberries as well. So it's a mixed berry sour, and I can tell you in testing, people really love this. People that aren't beer drinkers loved it because they're like, very hard to define. What is this? There's some sweetness. There's some sour. It's a very bubbly, effervescent type of thing. So we think, we hope anyway, that it's going to be received well.
Good stuff. I guess the one question that stands out with all of this is that you obviously have a passion for it, but how does that come to fruition? That you kind of go, okay, I love beer.
Right.
The idea, you know what? Maybe I can open a brewing company.
Well, you got to have a couple of screws loose to begin with.
Okay.
So, we were doing it as a hobby, home brewing.
Okay. All right. That's what I was thinking, because there's so many home brewing kits out there now, and you can clown around. But obviously, in the clowning around, something came about that went, we may be onto something here.
Well, you're exactly right. I had, prior to this, and always concurrent with my day job, my day career, I had always had a little bit of an entrepreneurial bug. I opened a craft beer bar and pub here in Monmouth County, up in Manasquan. I opened a second one over in Staten Island, New York. And my day job was also in manufacturing. So I said, if I can combine my passion for craft beer sales, right, with the pubs, with what I've learned and picked up at my manufacturing job, with my hobby of home brewing, and put all those three together, why haven't I opened a brewery yet? Right. And my wife gave me a list of reasons.
I'm sure she did. Yeah.
But
like going, hon, this may not be the wisest idea.
Yeah. But ultimately, we won her over. We wrote up a business plan. Actually, I went back to school and got a master's and got my MBA very specifically to learn how to write the right business plan for this type of business.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And once that was done, we set to work securing investors, and we're on our way.
It's funny because I came up with the name The A Game with this show, basically tapping into people who are achieving their goals. You're a great example of that. You took the bull by the horns, and you're starting to achieve, hopefully, the beginning of an empire. Obviously, it's exciting just to be at this level and just kind of go, we've got something.
Yep.
And one other thing, they're going to go on the website. We know that things can this be mailed? Or is that not legal in Jersey? That's something that I was always curious about.
So we'll talk about pre-COVID first. Okay, so pre-COVID, no. Absolutely.
That's what I thought, right.
You absolutely cannot mail. Now, during COVID times, different state legislatures have, again, come up with different rules to help breweries try to get through this, like all industries are having a hard time right now.
Absolutely.
So what New Jersey did is they still said, no, you can't mail it. If you have a physical brewery, what you can do is home deliveries of beer.
Okay.
So our physical location is under construction right now in Middletown, New Jersey, just about 20 minutes north of here, 15, 20 minutes. And so once that's open, besides people being able to come to our brewery, then we will now qualify for that rule if it's still in place.
Sure.
Because it was originally granted for 6 months, and that expired.
Okay.
All the breweries said, guys, like COVID's not cured. People still can't come out. So the state legislature, surprisingly and thankfully, they extended it by another 6 months. Nice. So now the push is on, hey, can we make this permanent? Right. So that next expiration is probably right around the time when we'll be opening our doors. So if we have the ability to do that, that would be great. If not, there is a fallback. Okay. And I'll talk to you about that. There's numerous websites and services that are domiciled in different states and which have different rules than New Jersey's crazy rules. And one of them, for example, Tavour, okay? So it's Tavour, Tavour.com. There's a Tavour app. And their whole goal is to try to bring you local craft beers that you can't get by you. So we're endeavoring to get on their site. Right. They've got some pretty strict criteria. They want to know that your beers on the beer review app known as Untapped, they want to know that you've got at least 100 reviews and that your beers have at least a 4.0 rating.
Now, when you talk about 100 reviews, we talking about reviews from bars, critics. Where are these reviews coming from?
Sure. So Untapped is sort of the beer drinkers app. These guys, I mean, we talked about the rise of craft beer. Yeah. It's also the rise of all the ancillary businesses that go along with craft beer. Okay. So let's say you were growing cucumbers on your farm and they weren't selling. You became a hop farm now. Now they're selling like hotcakes, right? Because all the breweries need hops.
Right.
So Untapped was an app that would at one point let you go to a bar and check in and just say what beer you're drinking. And what happened is it became the de facto like one-stop place for all things craft beer. Wow. So now you can go to a bar. Right. You can go to a store, buy beer, right? Or you can get it at a shared universe studio, go home, and from your couch you can check in. And you can say, okay, I'm enjoying this beer. They encourage people to post pictures of the beer you're drinking. It's not quite a social network, but it's a hybrid between a review app and a social network.
So if you are a fan of Ross Brewing, then encourage them to probably go there and give the reviews. Because if you are a fan, and give it a high review, and then it would help you get to another level.
1,000%, Rob. Thanks for saying that. We ask the viewers, the listeners, if you've had a Ross beer and you feel that we deserve it, go ahead and give us that 5 rating. 4 3/4 is acceptable as well. But again, really, if you enjoy the beer, we appreciate it. And once we have enough of them, then we turn to a service like Tavour and say, okay, we've met your criteria. Because here's the thing: we've got fans of Ross all across the country. We've got people from Chicago, from Omaha, Nebraska, from the West Coast, and they're saying, when can we get the beer?
Speaking of fans, Ming, I'm going to put you to work. There's a photo of two people that are kind of famous there. Speaking of famous people who happen to like Ross beer, that's the one. Click on that, will you?
Oh, my gosh.
That is Ming Shen. That's my boss from Comic Book Man. He runs a shared universe. The other guy, yeah, you might recognize Method Man.
That is the Method Man.
That is the Method Man. Speaking of fans of you.
So it's it's an interesting story there. We definitely have Ming to thank for the picture. Method Man appeared on Comic Book Men, which of course Ming and Mike and the rest of the team had that show on AMC for many years, and maybe it'll be coming back one day. That'd be great. And but coincidentally, Method Man and I actually had known each other even longer than that.
Oh, get out
of here. And when
Ming
put that together, he did not even know that. That's how coincidental it was. So I grew up in Staten Island, New York, and as did Method Man and many of the Wu-Tang Clan. Matter of fact, the high school I went to, Curtis High School, RZA, Ghostface, a lot of the guys had come through there, and so we were different years, but we all knew people that knew each other.
That's crazy.
Now, fast forward, after high school, I'm in college, and I'm working at a store in the Staten Island Mall called Comic Attitudes.
Okay.
And every Wednesday, without fail, your boy right there, Method Man, were there.
That is great.
He was a huge fan of the whole Ghost Rider franchise, but he liked Marvel Comics in general, and he was there. Matter of fact, if you look at their second album, Wu-Tang Forever, they have a shout-out to us in the liner notes, a shout-out to the crew at Comic Attitudes.
That's very cool.
So I show that to my kids, and I think they think I'm cool, and they're like, well, who's the Wu-Tang? So obviously I got some work to do, Rob. But yeah, so of course, he was there. I think he had a pretty cool hat on, and Ming asked him. Well, I was gonna say, Ming asked him if he can look at that hat, and he goes, "Keep it." He goes, "But then, can I have that hat that you're wearing, which was a Ross Brewing hat?"
So that's how he became and again, the connection that you already had. It's like, oh man, slam dunk.
It's crazy for sure.
That's great.
I'll tease this only because you put that picture up.
Right.
I wouldn't have brought this up otherwise. There's another member of the Wu-Tang Clan family, okay, and that is the RZA.
Okay.
When I had I mentioned I had a few bars. One of them was in Staten Island. He would pop in on random Saturday nights to DJ a set in our club room.
Oh,
I mean, you can't get any better than that.
Yeah.
So we've stayed in contact, and we're in the preliminary stages, but we're talking about would he want to collaborate on a Wu-Tang beer or a RZA beer.
That's a cool idea, yes.
And he said, but I have to design the label. And I'm like,
yeah,
you
sure.
design whatever you want.
Yourself out.
Exactly.
Do it.
Are you kidding me? So we're trying to land that.
That's
and
fantastic.
We'll keep everyone posted.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
John Ross Cocozza is the founder of Ross Brewing. He is here on the A Game. He also is a part of the Point Blank podcast, so he's in a very unfamiliar role being interviewed right now, so I appreciate you being out of your comfort zone.
Of course.
You obviously love doing this because you go on Point Blank you're on a regular basis over there.
We are Wednesday nights. We say 8:30 Eastern, 5:30 Pacific.
Right.
It's nominally a weekly show. On average, we do 3 out of 4 weeks.
Right.
Because at some point, Mike and Ming get a little fed up, so we give them a week off and then we restart.
It makes the bit that no, we don't. No, he gets fed up with me because he puts up with my crap like, oh God, Acampora's got another guest. Oh God. Oh. At least it's from John Ross. All right, we know him. That's all right. And he's like going, he's got like 5 coming up. You poor bastard. That's all I'm going to tell you. All right, up to Random Shots. This is my segment where I do a little bit of a look at some of the things that John has on his Facebook page. I thought this was the perfect way to do Random Shots. Plus, I had responded on one of his posts recently, so it kind of sets up beautifully. And if you don't follow John on Facebook, it's worth it because it seems like once a week he's always putting up some kind of top 3 list that he's doing. So a couple of them have come up here, and I got to start with this because you were talking about Sean Connery on your Facebook page. So who was the best Bond in your mind? Was it Connery or was it somebody else?
So I probably have a little bit different take. Well, you said we're about the same age, but for me, growing up, the Bond at the time was Roger Moore.
Yeah,
exactly. So those were the movies that were always first and foremost. Now my dad's like, no, you want to see Bond, you've got to see Connery.
Yeah.
So of course I love those movies as well. Timothy Dalton, Pierce Brosnan, they got a little wackier. But Daniel Craig, for me, has really brought it home.
Casino Royale, I hate to say it, as much as I don't want to make it number 1 on my list of Bond movies, it's become my all-time favorite. Yep. It really has.
And I'm, obviously we've lost many things during COVID.
Yes, we have, as a matter of fact.
And people have lost family members, businesses have unfortunately gone out of business, but the movie industry, right? And so it's a wash for 2020. So of course we lost the latest Bond, Bond 25, No Time to Die, but I think they're going to be coming out, I guess, rescheduling it to be released next year.
Correct.
So looking forward to that.
Definitely looking forward to that. This was an interesting one that I found on your Facebook page. Top 3 Disney movies of all time. What were your top 3? Because I wrote down my top 3 and I'll share in a second.
Okay, I'll tell you my top 3. It's a little bit different, my list. As
no problem.
We learned. We wound up talking about that on Point Blank. And
yeah, that's why I'm going to it.
Everyone had, sort of either traditional maybe Disney animation movies or even Disney live action movies. My top 3 were Tron. Okay.
Can't argue that.
Miracle, which was the
hockey team, 1980 hockey team. I forgot about that was a Disney movie. It's very good.
And I might get a lot of shit from your. I'm sorry. Let us.
You're allowed to say shit. It's a podcast.
All right. But my number 3 was actually High School Musical. Let me explain before you think I'm crazy.
I'm leaving. See ya.
Here it is. When my kids were young, they had this on Rob 24/7
hours a day,
all the time. And you know what? These catchy songs get in your head, and next thing you know, my wife's falling for Zac Efron. So anyway, I think they did a good job with it. That launched a franchise. But you could pick almost any 3 Disney movies out of that. What are yours?
Now, here's what I came up with, and it's one of those. Up, because the 10 minutes of that movie, I defy anybody to watch the anthology of watching that couple go through all the phases, and you're not crying at the end of it.
Of course.
How could you not? WALL-E, even though there's something just so beautiful about WALL-E.
Absolutely.
But the last one was because of my childhood, and I remember seeing this movie in the theater, Escape to Witch Mountain.
Yes. That got a lot of votes, man.
And I'm not surprised.
Yes,
because that's one of those films that from our generation as kids, it just sticks out, and we can't believe that What's-Her-Face is now on the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills.
Exactly. Really? and what was great, too, when we were kids, we used to have a lot less channels, guys, of course.
Yeah, exactly.
But there was always the Wide World of Disney on Sunday nights.
Yes.
And then we had seen Escape to Witch Mountain in the theaters, and I couldn't have been like maybe 4 or 5. Yeah. But then get to see it again on that Sunday night. It was so exciting. But I noticed the other 2 you picked, Pixar.
Yes.
And they do a great job.
They do a great
everything, man. It's not just the animation, the story, but the emotion. And I think that's why you picked the ones you did.
It was total emotion. One question when you were doing that topic, did anybody pick Gus the field goal kicking mule?
Did not make the list.
Did not make the list. Oh, damn that.
We always do one that's like Mr. Irrelevant, aka like who got the least amount of votes.
Right.
And I think the movie Pete's Dragon got a vote. And I think that one I think was last place. But there were no field goal
kicking mules. I'm disappointed in that. This is something I responded to on John's Facebook page, so I'm taking it one step further on this. Okay, biggest crushes you were growing up. Ming, I'm going to set up the 2 photos. Was it from the Karate Kid 1, Elizabeth Shue, who was adorable back then, or Karate Kid 2's Tamlyn Tomita?
Wow. So, yes, I recognize the picture because you're right. I did just post about her.
Yes.
I couldn't believe that in like the latest season of Star Trek Picard that she's playing this well, I'm not going to spoil it, but she plays a key role in the series. She does. And so based purely on which one I had a bigger crush on at the moment, I actually am going to go with Karate Kid 2's Tamlyn Tomita. Much like our very own Ming Chen, she had an air of exoticism to her that I was not familiar with previously. And I mean, that said, Elizabeth Shue, she was America's sweetheart.
Between that and Adventures in Babysitting, I was totally smitten with her. But the turning point with me and Tamlyn Tomita was the Joy Luck Club. And you watch how she just, she was gorgeous. And you're just sitting and go, I know, wipe the drool, thank you. Embarrassing, but she's stunning. And, I know they're both over 50 now, and they're both looking fantastic.
Yep. And there's talk maybe that we'll be seeing Elizabeth Shue's character of Allie come back in Cobra Kai season 3.
Yeah,
a lot of rumors.
Oh my God! Have you watched all 2 seasons?
Oh yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Watched the whole thing through twice.
There you go. What you did during COVID. Exactly. Random Sauce with John Ross Cocozza. Okay, this was the one I liked that you posted. Bottom 3 TV series finales.
Yes, rather than a top 3, that was a bottom 3.
Bottom 3 in this case, yes.
Well, you know why? Because there's a lot of great series.
Right. And the way they go out sometimes leaves that taste in your mouth going, how dare you?
Exactly. I mean, the first one that comes to mind for me was Lost. That didn't really do it for me.
Right.
This may be unpopular to say in the state of New Jersey here, but Sopranos.
I'm sure I got a lot of votes when you were talking about that.
It did. There were a few others, but those two actually got more than anybody else. And you know who else rounded out the top three, believe it or not, was Seinfeld.
Interesting.
Because they had a series finale that sort of was the payoff. They brought back all the characters from the 7 seasons, but people just felt like it was too, I mean, I didn't vote for that, but people just felt maybe it was too gimmicky.
Maybe.
So, did you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and it's interesting because it was just announced by Showtime that Dexter's going to do a new season in 2021. And that obviously is their way of saying, no, we really didn't wrap up the show that well.
Yeah, they messed up, man.
Oh, my God. I mean, I was addicted to that show, so I'm actually very happy to hear that.
Yep.
This one only because it's weird. I get up in the morning, I'm getting ready to go to my other job, and I'm like, there's MeTV, and my 3 sons are on. And I remember just watching it in reruns, and recently they showed the last episode, and I'm like, oh, that's the last episode? Then I read about it. They were actually planning another season. CBS pulled the plug that they couldn't do a farewell season. So in a weird way, my 3 sons had the worst possible...
Sure, because they never got a chance to say goodbye properly.
They never got that. And you think 13 seasons on the air and you don't get a chance to say goodbye properly. That's kind of a shame. Then I went off the board and went for the 72 Olympics because of everything that was going on there and the Russians beating the Americans and the hostages. It was like going, yeah, that's probably about as bad as it gets on television.
That was the Munich Olympics.
The Munich Olympics, yeah.
Okay, interesting. That would be a very unique vote there.
Thank you very much. All right, and I'm going to go back to beer for this last one on random shots.
Sure.
You can go either best or worst cheap beer of all time.
Best or worst? Best or worst? I think... For the value,
keywords, yes.
The best cheap beer. I mean, listen, they won the blue ribbon, so I got to give it to Pabst. PBR is
why did that Can you explain the rebirth of PBR? What brought that on in your mind?
I would say the rise of hipsterism for sure. They're always looking to take something from the past and maybe. I say they as if they're monolithic, but in general, this is what I've observed anyway. And trying to make it cool again,
right?
And you go to a few dive bars, and maybe they're becoming a little bit cooler. And then like PBR is in everyone's hands, and I started drinking it again after not drinking it for probably 20 years.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
And then I was like, you know what? This isn't too bad. This isn't too bad. And the other thing I'll admit to, it is a mass market sort of cheaper beer, but there's something about it. Maybe the marketing even got to me. But if I'm on the beach, I'll still have a nice Corona.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. I'm going to go with my worst first. Ming, there is a photo of a beer can. I don't even know. I might stump the panel on this one.
What?
You never realized about that, did you?
No, I did not.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to about the middle 80s. I'm in college at this point, just getting started.
Sure.
And there it is. And I remember seeing it, and literally it was like about $4.99 a case. I mean, you want to talk about, and it was terrible. I mean, it was just awful. The can, from what I seen online, it's like the can alone, if you got it like a...
Oh, I bet it's worth something.
Yeah, it's worth something, exactly. But the beer itself, do not recommend it.
Wow.
When Milwaukee's Best was better than the net, you kind of go, oh, it's not good.
Yeah, I'll give you one other one that I found was a cheap beer, a really cheap beer, but it was good, is from Genesee, Jenny Cream Ale.
Okay, yeah.
They're based out of Rochester, New York. And when I was in college, that was, I guess, the cheap beer du jour.
Right.
And so we would always get, but not even like, 6-pack, we'd get like the 30-pack, the jumbo.
Exactly.
And there's still cheap beer out there performing. Just earlier today, I saw a place with Narragansett. That's another cheap one.
Yeah, I've never tried that, though.
Listen, it's not going to be a big cost investment for you to try it.
Okay, all right, that's good to know. All right, then, if I don't like it, there you go. Clean the toilet
there you
with
go.
it at least. There you go. I remember working at one of the radio jobs I had. I was in the Lehigh Valley for about 3 years. So I was introduced to Yingling right around the late 90s. And Yingling had been around for a while, but I didn't know. But up in the Lehigh Valley, that was the cheap beer. And I'm sitting there going, where's this been all my life? I'm like going for cheap. And
if you're in Eastern Pennsylvania...
Yeah.
You don't even have to order it by brand name. You go to a bar and just say, "Give me a lager." You get
Yingling. Yeah, I found that out. I found that out back then. I mean, that was incredibly affordable. And you're sitting there going, "Okay, I can drink cheap and enjoy this. Yep. I'm happy."
You're not wrong. That is probably bang for your buck, you know, and to the point that I didn't even think of it as a cheap beer, but you're right. I mean, it is definitely cheaper than craft beer for sure.
Yeah.
But they actually position themselves as America's oldest independent brewery, which is true. They've been brewing since the 1800s.
Yeah.
And I'll actually share this for your viewers and listeners. This is our Shrewsbury Lager right here.
Yeah, I'll put this up so this way we can have it on camera and you can take a look at it. There you go.
So that's an amber lager. The particular style is called a Vienna lager.
Okay.
But I had a few inspirations for this. Okay, one of them was Sam Adams' original Boston Lager. One of them is Brooklyn Lager, and the third.
And that's another company we didn't bring up. That's another one right around 1990. They got their start, and you know, here they are 30 years later.
You're right on the board, man.
Yeah.
They incorporated in '89. They started shipping in '90. You're right there, and then now they're huge today.
Yeah, big time.
They actually got partially acquired by the Japanese beer giant Kirin. They make a beer that comes here, Kirin Ichiban. We see that sometimes,
definitely,
particularly at Asian restaurants. But and they did that. They bought a 24% stake in Brooklyn because what that does is, number one, under the U.S. Independent brewery rules, Brooklyn is still classified as an independent brewery. 25% triggers, corporate ownership, and then in Japan, it helps Brooklyn get distributed in Japan, where they have a policy of Japanese beer first. So now Kirin can say Brooklyn is a Japanese beer.
Oh,
so
that's a win-win.
It is a win-win.
God, yeah.
So actually, those two beers, the Sam Adams Boston Lager and the Brooklyn Lager, along with the one you just mentioned, Yingling Lager, those three, I kind of drew up a triangle and said, what do I like about each of them? And sort of tried to reverse engineer a beer right in the middle. And that's our Shrewsbury Lager. What I could tell you is, for our non-craft beer drinkers, this one does the best. It's the most accessible for those reasons.
How long did it take to get that formula right? Because if you're cherry picking between three beers, I'm sure there was a lot of sampling and a lot of this.
That's the fun part about making beer, Rob, is all the taste testing. You got it, brother. I'd say we probably went through a good dozen recipe formulations before we settled on the one, because, it's not like people publish their recipes.
No, of course not.
You're trying to do it by taste and trial and error. And, okay, what do I like about this? Okay, I like the bite. I like the aftertaste. Taste. I like the mouthfeel. Okay, I like that from here, but I like this from this one. So you're trying to figure out which grains to use, in which quantities, then which hops to use, in what quantities, and when to add the hops, and what temperature with the water. A lot of variables. So we think this version, which obviously, if we went to market with it, it's the version we like best, right?
Obviously.
Yeah, but it's on tap at, probably, if we were to leave here, a stone's throw, 10 different places. And that's what we're finding is, for those people that aren't craft beer drinkers, this beer can be the gateway drug.
I like the sound of that. I'll leave you one last question. What is the goal to go nationwide? I mean, I know it's kind of jumping the shark a little bit, because you're just getting out here now locally. But do you have a goal in your head to say, maybe in this many years I can see this being a national beer?
No, very fair question. What I would say is, right now we're in 2 states. We're in New Jersey and New York.
But still, 2 pretty predominant states to be in.
Yeah, and 2 high population states that could hopefully translate to moving a lot of beer.
Right.
So I could tell you that our plans going forward are more city-based than states, in this sense. Philadelphia, Boston, Chicago, Washington, D.C., along with the state of Connecticut. Those are the 5 next markets we'll be going in. And then beyond that, you're going to see a big jump, because then we're going to go down to Florida.
Nice.
Okay. And then once we're in Florida, we're actually going to then start working our way up and down the coast till we meet in the middle, I don't know, South Carolina somewhere. So that's our plans. No immediate plans to go west beyond Chicago.
Okay.
And the reason there is, those cities all have lots of New Yorkers and New Jerseyans that have relocated there for work or school.
Very, very
and if they see a brand that reminds them of home, I think something can happen there. It'll probably be a while before we get to California. I might blow your mind with this. We're going to be in other countries before we're in the rest of the states.
Now, how did you set that up in your mind? Let's put it that way.
So, and some of these conversations have already happened, by the way.
That's great.
But American craft beer is one of the best exports that America has.
Wow.
The demand is high. Even in traditional beer making and drinking countries like Germany and the UK. I mean, they have their own thousands-year tradition of brewing. They still like what we have in terms of American innovation. And then you've got countries like Australia and China and Italy where they can't get enough American craft beer. So there are craft beer distributors there that would love to import American brands.
Right.
These are conversations we've had, and more than likely will be in 5 other countries before we're in all 50 states.
Wow.
Yeah, I know it's crazy, but you think about it from California, right? California might have 5 of the 10 best craft breweries, so they're not in a rush to bring in a New Jersey brewery right now.
Fair enough.
But if somebody else wants to, we'll certainly be willing to work with them.
Go to the website for Ross Brewing because just the love of the names you talk about, the Manasquan, the Shrewsbury, the Navesink, all their brews named after little areas that you might know in New Jersey if you're around the Jersey Shore, that is for sure. And the harvest is out right now, just in time for the holidays. It is a wonderfully semi-dry cider, no aftertaste, just enough spice, and it gives you that holiday feel for it. So I highly recommend this, by the way.
Thank you, Rob.
And one more, Point Blank Podcast happens here through a shared universe. Night and time again is
Wednesday nights, 8:30.
5:30 Pacific.
That's right.
John, thank you so much, brother.
Thanks for having me on, Rob.
Absolutely. That's a wrap for this week. I'm Rob Acampora. We'll be back on Thursday night. Got a really cool guest, I believe, Henry Hall, who's singer-songwriter from the indie music scene, but he has a very famous pair of parents. Check out my Facebook page, find out more about that. Until next time, take care. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.